Some sad news in the world of college basketball as legendary coach Bob Knight passed away. Bob Knight was a legend, not just with Indiana, but with a few other teams as well. Knight was born in 1940 in the town of Massillon, Ohio, and would play organized basketball in high school. It was such a good move that he actually went to Ohio State and played basketball there. He actually was a reserve for the 1960 Ohio State squad that won the NCAA championship, and also had John Havlicek and Jerry Lucas on the team. So he was an NCAA champion as a player. The Buckeyes would also get to the final the next 2 years. Bob Knight played a big role, but unfortunately Cincy would get them in the finals both years. It's a lot of star power and all that. Knight would graduate from Ohio State with a degree in history and government. Bob Knight would enlist in the U.S. Army and be on active duty for 6 years. Well, either on active duty or in the reserves. But he accepted an assistant coaching job with Army at the age of 24, which was amazing. In 6 years as head coach, he got 102 wins. And funny as it is, one of his players was Mike Krzyzewski, who would later on go on to be the Hall of Fame coach of Duke. He was known for having an explosive temper and all that, even at Army. They lost to BYU at the 1966 NIT, and he blew up heavily. He almost went to Wisconsin to be the head coach, but he withdrew his candidacy and went back to Army for 3 years. Indiana would produce him as their head coach in 1971, and in 29 years he put up 662 wins, a .735 winning percentage, and 3 national titles in 1976, 1981, 1987. 76 was memorable because that was the year that they went undefeated, the last team to do so in history. 81 was in the shadow of Ronald Reagan being shot, and 1987 was Keith Smart's improbable shot with 3 seconds left against Syracuse. Bob Knight coached the last undefeated team in NCAA history. He had legends and all that. Knight's team in 1986 was profiled in the best-selling book, A Season on the Brink, and Knight granted author John Feinstein unprecedented access to the Indiana basketball program. Unfortunately, there were problems with his behavior and all that. 1985, he infamously threw a chair across the free throw line in a game for Indiana against Purdue. He would physically assault his players. He choked a few. He had weird moves. 97, Neil Reed claimed that he was choked by Bob Knight, and that later led to trouble. Indiana President Miles Brand, who soon would be the president of the NCAA, said that there would be zero tolerance. Unfortunately, a Indiana freshman called Bob Knight, "Hey Knight, what's up?" And Knight tried to get some respect to the young man, but it was misconstrued and all of that. Unfortunately, there was a zero tolerance thing, and Brand fired him. Fortunately for Knight, he was so popular, thousands of Indiana students burned Brand in effigy. A lot of people had a thing and all that. So anyway, despite all that, Bobby Knight did find work with Texas Tech, and it was impressive. He wore a red sweater and said that this was, without a question, the most comfortable red sweater I've had on in 6 years. And he would improve the program. In his first 4 years at the school, he led them to 3 NCAA tournaments and 1 NIT. The best performance by Texas Tech was 2005 when they got to the Sweet 16. Huge. Knight would announce his retirement in February 2008, and after that season, he would ask his son Pat to be head coach. He actually helped the U.S. win gold medal at the 1979 Pan Am Games, but he got into trouble quite a bit with things. He was head coach of the 1984 Olympic team in basketball, which was huge and all that. He was honored at Indiana in February 2020, 20 years after they dumped him. He knew he had the motion offense, and he had his legacy. 902 wins was the record, but unfortunately, Mike Krzyzewski, Jay Boeheim, and Roy Williams all have surpassed it. But Bob Knight was an icon. He's still the youngest coach to reach 200, 300, and 400 wins in history. So, it made everything. And he is the only coach in history to win the NCAA, the NIT, an Olympic gold medal, and a Pan Am gold medal. All that. And Bobby Knight is one of only 3 players, alongside Dean Smith and Joe Hall, to have been on and coached an NCAA tournament basketball team. So it's just amazing all that. There were a lot of negativity towards him, but that was just Bobby Knight. He married his wife Nancy April 17, 1963, and had 2 sons, Tim and Pat. Pat Knight would coach Lamar and Texas Tech in basketball. Bob Knight actually did marry his second wife in 1988. He was known for making generous donations to Indiana University and also Texas Tech.